So what do we have here? We have the starter out of my 66 Monza 140. Where'd it come from? Oh, Wilson, remanufactured product, Winnipeg, Canada. There you go. And I got the manual. So let's start pulling it apart. Oh, first thing I noticed, why is there rocks inside the starter? Well, not inside, but yeah. And the other thing I noticed, taking it off, was the size of these two nuts. I'll have to check. I'll get back to you on that, but I don't know if they're metric or standard. I couldn't find the right wrench at the moment, but I will get the right size. Okay, before I disassemble it, I just took a little quick peek. This is interesting. Here's the field winding. Get my finger on it. I don't think that's supposed to be loose. May not be anything wrong with the starter except for this. I have no idea. But right now that thing it's not loose. It's strange. So at this point in the process, having taken the starter off and found the issue with that field coil connection, pretty sure that was the issue. But I've decided I've already got it out. Why don't I just rebuild the thing? I'm not putting any new parts in it. It's just basically a tear apart, clean it, check things out, and put it back together. So let's get on with that problem. Let's get on with the process. Okay, the disassembly. First of all, we're going to take off the solenoid. So just remove the small screw from the back of connection, the coil there connection, and then remove these two big slotted screws up here. And then take your solenoid and kind of rotate it clockwise. You can see that kind of flange there at the bottom. That's going to come out. There we go. And there we go. So that's the solenoid out. We've got it, obviously, that's all one piece. And then we've got a spring. It doesn't look like it has an up or down. It's all the same size. I always look to make sure these things are. And then we've got the solenoid. Pretty rusty looking. Okay. So now with the solenoid off, if we hook up the ground to the frame, and we hook up the positive to that field coil wire, and then we turn on the power. Okay, let's try that again. So the starter seems to be working fine. The motor itself. Obviously there's a problem with the solenoid. Okay, so we have this solenoid disassembled to this state. All the pieces are out of the cap. This is the bolt. You can see is pretty beat up there. It obviously sparks on here. Okay, this is the other bolt. It's in not bad shape. It's held in with it's hard to see right there. See if I can get my screwdriver in to show you. It's a little piece. You get the light right. Hard with. There's a little triangular piece bent over. I just got to unbend that a little bit, and then we can take that bolt off. And then the same idea over here with this bolt. And this is quite corroded, this bolt. But you can see I need to open up this little piece right here, bend that just a little bit so I can get that bolt slid out, and then we can clean that bolt up as well. Okay, so that bolt and that corroded bolt I removed from from those two. And this piece, the copper disc, that just slides right out. And it was just a drop in here. It just comes right like that. Yeah. This is the bolt that was in the R hole over here. Okay, and yeah, where are we at? I'll just take this rubber piece, I guess, off of here, like so, just to make that complete. And that's basically the solenoid. The coil inside there, it's nothing really to take apart there. I mean, you could clean up the outside and paint it, I guess, just for shits and giggles, but functionally, that's as far as we need to go with that. So now the rest of these pieces, we need to get them cleaned up. So there you goes. I got her all take apart. 2 bolts, frame, cap, and the frame, coil frame, field frame. They all come apart. They just slide out. The armature with the solenoid yoke on here, they'll be held into this piece by this pin and this dinky little circlip that's a bugger. I didn't have any snap ring pliers to open up that thing, so I was able to push on it with this end and got it to move just back a little bit, enough to then was able to get the screwdriver in here and little screwdriver and just pull it out. So that's how I did that. Okay, so now it is time to get these cleaned up. This thing, clean up the outside. You don't want to be dipping this thing in any fluid or anything like that. I think the manual says right there, field coils need to be removed only when defects in the coil are indicated. Clean all starting parts, but do not use grease dissolving solvent for cleaning the overrunning clutch, armature, and field coils, since such a solvent would dissolve the grease packed in the clutch mechanism and would damage armature and field coil insulation. So there you go, you have been warned. Okie doke. Okay, so here's all the bits and pieces out of the combination of parts that I put in the ultrasonic cleaner. Parts that I just cleaned up by hand. Used to use a little bit of the brake cleaner on the outside and a rag on the outside of this. Same on this piece here. On here, I just used a brake cleaner, like a brake cleaner on a rag, just up in this area. And then over here, I just used a piece of 1000 grip sandpaper, clean this out, and then use my dental pick to clean out the grooves. So that's all good and clean. A couple more pieces are left in the pressure washer. No clue why I keep saying pressure washer. I use the ultrasonic cleaner to clean all the parts. Let's see. The drive housing and the commutator end frame, they're still getting cleaned. But as soon as they're done, we should be able to put this thing back together. I also just took the end of these, the 2 bolts that, yeah, this is the ring, copper ring that goes, it transfers the 12 volts from one side through when the solenoid clicks in, transfers from here to the, basically from the top bolt down to the bottom bolt, which then transfers it to the motor. So I just cleaned those up with sandpaper as well. There's a bit of a groove in that one. I think what I do is when I go to install it, I just rotate it 90 degrees or 180 degrees. So, making progress. Okay, so the commutator end frame, all cleaned up. The drive housing, all cleaned up. Now it's time to put the sucker back together. Okay, using a little bit of lubricant. You just use some silicone lubricant. Get some lubricant on the gear, on the shaft, on the thrust bearing, on the end of the shaft, on the little dogs here, and down inside where it's going to fit inside the drive housing. Put a little grease in there. Get that all done. Once you get the grease all in the right spot, we're going to slide this all together. So there's a bit of a groove in here. So have that facing outwards as opposed to inside. That gives that a little bit more room to travel. Okay, so then we need to slide that over that. Then this whole thing has to go inside, and make sure you don't lose this down there. So what best to do is lift this up and drop this over top of this as opposed to shoving it down this way. So in other words, try to do it this way. Okay. So there, I've got that like that, and I'm going to grab the drive housing and drop it over the top. But I need two hands, so I'm going to have to put you down. Okay, so once you get that dropped in there, and the lever's in there, the pin is going to drop down inside here. And get it all lined up. There we go. And then we need to put on the little clip, retaining clip, and I'll do that next. Funny how those little retaining clips can be so easy to slip on, but such a prick to take off. Anyway, so that's in place. Okay, so slide the field frame over top. Kind of use your fingers and kind of find the lowest one and move the brushes out carefully until they kind of just catch on one side and the other side, and just get them, just work the four brushes out until they slide over the commutator, and that'll drop in. There's a little notch here on the frame and the drive case, and on the field frame there's a knob, or whatever, a notch, or not a notch, whatever's the opposite of a notch. It'll be sticking out, so that drops into there. That makes get this in the right spot. Okay, so now this leather brake washer goes on. You can see it's a bit raised on one side and flat on the other. So the raised part goes into this part here. And then this washer is flat and it's got a bit of a raised part. Again, the flat of that goes to the inside of the flat of that. Okay, and then this outside is going to fit in on the end case. So now we need to put some lubrication on here, some silicone lubrication on here and on here, and put that together. Okay, when you're putting the commutator end frame, to line the bolts up, look for right there. There's a bit of a raised section. That's the threaded part that accepts that long bolt. So that's right there. So you know to line up this hole with that down there. And then this one will automatically line up for you. Okay, so that's the trick there. Okay. Okay, so this bolt goes on the solenoid here. There's a small one there and a larger one there, but the small one here, quite corroded. So I just took my dental pick and scraped away at it Let's see if we can take a look. Try cleaning it up a bit. The other would be to put it in here. Whoop. Zoom out a bit. The other way would be to put it in here with some flux and solder and try to solder that on. I'll think about it. Okay, so I put some flux on that bolt and on the brass piece or whatever that it's on there. Heat it up and throw a little solder on there. See how that works. Okay, we're finishing putting the solenoid back together. The rubber gasket, drop in the whirly disc there. That's the frame bolt that goes onto here. The lid, put the R connector in there. As you can see, that's the other big copper bolt there for the positive, and I rotated it. That groove was at the bottom. I rotated it at 180, so it's at the top. We get a fresh area now for the disc to whack against. So that's good. So we should be able to just drop this sucker on here. Get everything lined up. Gotta get the S in that hole. Then we got to get the other one in there, and I'm going to need two hands. Well, the encouraging thing is this is going to go on here. That little screw is going to hold the coils onto here, field coil, and the two screws are going to mount that onto there. And there's no parts left over. That's always a plus. Okay, well, it wasn't on there before, but I added a lock washer and a flat washer on here because I had problems, obviously, when I first looked at it, and it was loose there. Well, it ain't going to be loose now. So I think there's my bolts. One has a bit of a shoulder and the other one doesn't. They're different lengths. I have no idea. Those were mounting it on. I think it will work. I think we're ready to go. Let's bench test it first. Then if it works, then we put it back in the car. Okay, so I wondered whether or not the battery charger was putting up enough juice to kick it over. So I've got the booster cables running directly to the battery in the car. And now let's test that. Well, the proof is in the cranking. So let's see what happens. Cranks like a charm. Won't start because I haven't given any gas. I'll give it a couple. But it'll just, might as well. 1, 2, 3. Looks like a charm. Another job done. Making progress.